The mirror was scratched. Petra Valdez noticed that first. Standing in Arlington National Cemetery, with November rain soaking through her black dress, holding the small, rectangular piece of glass that had survived 3 deployments, 2 firefights, and her father's final breath in Yemen. 21 months. That's how long Colonel Nathaniel Nate Valdez had been in the ground. 21 months since the flag-draped coffin. 21 months since the rifle salute that made her flinch with each crack. 21 months since the officer handed her this mirror with words she barely heard through the ringing in her ears. Your father wanted you to have this. He carried it every mission. Now at 26, Petra stood alone in her Arlington apartment, the mirror catching lamplight as she turned it over. On the back, scratched in her father's precise hand, "See yourself clearly, mija, always." Below it, a date, the day he died. The sealed letter sat on her desk. She'd carried it for 21 months without opening it. Some part of her knew that once she broke that seal, once she read those words, her father would be truly gone. The letter was Schrodinger's goodbye. Unread, he was still somehow alive, still had things left to say. But tonight, with the mirror in one hand and her go-bag packed for Syria in the morning, Petra finally broke the wax seal. The paper was thick, military issue. His handwriting was steady. He'd written this before his last deployment, knowing he might not come back. Petra, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry. I never wanted to leave you alone. But you're not alone. You never were. Everything I taught you, everything we practiced together in the cold before dawn, every calculation, every breath held before the shot, that's me staying with you. Every time you settle behind a rifle, I'm there. Every impossible situation you face, I'm there. You have a gift, mija. A gift I've seen in only 3 people in my 30 years. The ability to see what others can't, to make shots that shouldn't be possible, to read the world like a language only you speak. But remember this, gifts demand payment. They always do. Payment in blood, in cold, in pieces of yourself you can't get back. The question isn't whether you'll pay. The question is whether you'll survive the paying. I love you, always. Papa P. S. Check the mirror again. Look closer. Petra wiped her eyes and examined the mirror under the lamp. There, etched so finely she'd missed it for 21 months, another line of text along the edge. Core temp 96.8 degrees Fahrenheit. Thermal ghost. Use it. Her father had known. Of course he'd known. He'd been the one who discovered it when she was 12, running a fever that turned out to be hypothermia during winter training. The thermometer read 96.8 degrees Fahrenheit. The doctor said it was impossible. Humans couldn't function at that temperature. But Petra could. Her body ran cold, always had. It made her invisible to thermal imaging, made her see heat signatures differently than normal people, made her something other than entirely human. Her father had recognized it not as a defect, but as an advantage, a gift. And gifts, he'd written, demand payment. Petra folded the letter, slipped it into her tactical vest pocket next to the mirror, and checked her watch. 400 hours. The Osprey left for Syria in 6 hours. She had 5 hours to sleep, but sleep wouldn't come. It never did anymore. So she sat in the dark, holding the mirror, watching lamplight dance across its scratched surface, and wondered what payment Syria would demand. The MV-22 Osprey vibrated with the particular frequency that gets into your bones and stays there. Petra sat in the rear, rifle across her lap, surrounded by 14 men who looked at her like she was a stray dog that had wandered onto a military aircraft. Senior Chief Decker Quinn was the worst. 35, built like a brick wall, with the kind of confidence that comes from 100 combat drops and 0 doubts. He leaned back in his seat, arms crossed, studying Petra with open contempt. "So," he said, voice loud enough to carry over the engine noise, "CIA sent us a librarian. Where's your reading glasses, sweetheart? Laughter rippled through the cabin, rough, masculine, dismissive. Petra didn't look up from her rifle. She was performing her pre-mission check for the third time. Scope calibration, bolt action, magazine seating. Everything perfect, everything controlled. Eyes front, gentlemen. Commander Garrett Hollis stood at the front of the cabin, 45, gray at the temples, with the kind of face that had seen too many men die. Mission brief in 60 seconds. Nobody looked front. They were all still staring at Petra. She kept her focus on the rifle. M24 sniper weapon system, 7.62 by 51 millimeters NATO. Effective range, 800 meters. In her hands, considerably farther. The weapon weighed 12.1 pounds unloaded. She'd carried heavier grocery bags, but right now, surrounded by men who treated her like a secretary at a gun range, this rifle was the only friend she had. Commander, Master Chief Brennan didn't bother lowering his voice. 42, weathered leather face, 20 years of combat scars. The team's primary sniper. Permission to speak freely? Granted. Brennan jerked his thumb toward Petra. What the hell is this? We're going into an ISIS stronghold with a woman who looks like she should be teaching kindergarten, not providing overwatch. More laughter. Petra's jaw tightened, but she didn't react. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. They'll underestimate you, Mija, every single time. Let them. And when the moment comes, when everything falls apart and they're out of options, you show them what a Valdez can do. Phantom Zero is a CIA asset, Hollis replied, his voice flat. Orders came from JSOC. She's our precision support for this operation. Precision support? Brennan leaned forward, his eyes hard. Commander, I've been shooting since before she learned to walk. What's a kid going to do that I can't? Hollis's expression didn't change. That's above my pay grade, Master Chief. We follow orders. Quinn spoke up. With respect, sir, this is a rescue mission. 3 American journalists. ISIS has them in a fortified compound outside Raqqa. We're talking 60-plus hostiles, maybe more. And Langley sends us... her. He said the word like it tasted bad. Petra finally looked up. Her voice was quiet but clear, cutting through the engine noise like a knife through silk. 87. Silence. Quinn frowned. What? 87 hostiles, not 60. Your intel is outdated by 36 hours. Petra's gray eyes held his without blinking. ISIS reinforced the compound yesterday. 2 technical vehicles with mounted 50 caliber machine guns. 3 sniper positions on elevated structures. And they've got thermal dampening blankets, so your scopes won't see half of them. The SEALs exchanged glances. Brennan snorted. And how would you know that, sweetheart? Did you read it in Vogue magazine? More laughter, louder this time. Petra held his gaze. I know because I've been studying ISIS tactical patterns for 3 years. I know because I reviewed satellite imagery that your team hasn't seen yet. She paused, and something flickered across her face. Something dark, something old. And I know because my father died in Yemen 21 months ago. And I've memorized every piece of intelligence about enemy operations in this region since then. The laughter died. Hollis's head turned sharply. Your father? Petra's voice didn't waver. Colonel Nathaniel Valdez, Delta Force sniper instructor. He was providing overwatch for a SEAL extraction in Yemen. The mission was compromised. He held his position for 52 minutes, saving 12 lives before an enemy sniper found him. The cabin went completely silent except for the engine's roar. Quinn's smirk faded. His voice changed, softer now, almost human. Nate Valdez was your father? Yes. I knew him. Quinn's face had gone pale. I was on that bird in Yemen. Jesus Christ, he held off an entire platoon, 52 minutes alone. We thought... He stopped, unable to finish. He was the best, Petra said simply. Then she returned to her rifle, hands steady, face expressionless. But inside, her heart was hammering, because she'd just played her only card, revealed the only thing these men might respect, her father's name, and now she had to live up to it. Brennan wasn't convinced. Training's one thing, combat's another. You ever actually shot anyone, little girl? You ever watched a man die through your scope and known you're the one who ended him? Petra's hands stopped moving. For a moment, something passed across her face, a shadow, a memory, a ghost. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. That's classified. Classified? Brennan laughed bitterly. We're about to trust our lives to a 26-year-old with classified experience. Outstanding. Commander Hollis held up his hand. Enough. Brennan, your primary sniper. Phantom Zero is backup in elevated overwatch. She stays behind the main element and engages only on my authorization. Clear? Crystal, sir. Brennan shot Petra a look of pure contempt. Just keep the kid out of my way. Petra said nothing, but in her mind she heard her father's voice from that last phone call before Yemen. Words she'd replayed 1,000 times in the 21 months since. They'll underestimate you, Mija, every single time. Let them. And when the moment comes, when everything falls apart and they're out of options, you show them what a Valdez can do. The Osprey banked hard. 2 minutes to insertion, the pilot announced. Landing zone is hot. Repeat, LZ is hot. Hollis stood. Gear check. Final weapons inspection. We're going in fast and loud, people. He pulled up a holographic display. The journalists are being held in an underground bunker at the center of the compound. Intel says ISIS plans to execute them at sunrise. That gives us 5 hours. Sir, Lieutenant Marcus Wade, the team's intelligence officer, looked up from his tablet, face pale. I'm getting updated thermal imaging. The numbers don't match our brief. How bad? Wade's hands shook slightly. I'm counting at least 90 heat signatures, maybe more. They're clustered in defensive positions around the compound perimeter. 90? Quinn grabbed the tablet. That's more than double our original estimate. This is a goddamn ambush waiting to happen. We don't abort, Hollis's voice was steel. Those journalists die if we don't go in. We adapt and overcome. That's what SEALs do. Petra stood. The movement drew every eye. She was small, 5'6", 128 in full gear, and the tactical vest hung loose on her frame. Everything about her screamed wrong for this environment. But her eyes were steady, calm. The eyes of someone who had already made peace with what was coming. Commander, she said quietly, request permission to establish overwatch before main element advances. Hollis studied her, calculating, weighing. Denied. You stay with the team until we secure a perimeter. Then you can find your position. Sir, with respect, that's an order, Phantom Zero. Petra's jaw tightened. Yes, sir. The Osprey touched down hard. Sand exploded around the aircraft as the rear ramp dropped, and the night swallowed them whole. The Syrian desert at 2 in the morning was a different kind of darkness. Not the absence of light, but the presence of something older. A darkness that had existed before humans invented fire. Before they learned to fear the night, Petra ran down the ramp with the rear guard, rifle ready, boots hitting sand that was somehow both scorching from the day's heat and already cooling toward the brutal cold of desert night. The air tasted like dust and something else, something metallic. Fear, not hers. The fear of the men around her. She could sense it in their movements, their breathing, the slight hesitation before they broke cover. They were walking into something bad, and they knew it. 87 hostiles, Petra thought. Maybe more now, and they think I'm the liability. The team advanced in diamond formation, 400 meters to the compound. Ancient ruins rose from the sand like broken teeth, remnants of some civilization that had thrived here 3,000 years ago, before drought and war ground it to dust. ISIS had fortified it well. Sandbag positions, razor wire, guard towers. This wasn't a temporary camp. This was a stronghold. Alpha team, move to eastern approach. Hollis's hand signals were crisp, professional. Bravo team, western flank. Charlie team, hold center. Phantom Zero. I know, Petra interrupted quietly. Stay behind. Good girl. The words landed like a slap, but Petra swallowed her response. 3 hours, she thought. Give me 3 hours and you'll never call me that again. They were 200 meters from the compound when Wade's voice crackled to the radio, tight with confusion. Commander, I'm losing thermal signatures. What do you mean losing? They're disappearing. 1 minute I had 90 plus heat sources. Now I'm showing 40, maybe less. It's like they're just vanishing. Brennan, positioned 30 meters ahead, laughed quietly. Told you the kid was seeing ghosts. 40 hostiles, that's manageable. But Petra had stopped moving. Her naked eye, that freakish vision her father had discovered when she was 9. Vision that could pick out details at ranges that shouldn't be humanly possible, caught what the thermals couldn't. Subtle movements in the shadows. Shapes wrapped in something that blocked their heat signatures. Thermal dampening blankets. Exactly as she'd warned them. Commander, her whisper was urgent. They're still there. They're using thermal camouflage. Your scopes can't see them, but I can. Phantom Zero, hold your position. Sir, listen to me. There are hostiles on the eastern ridge. At least 20. More on the western approach. They're letting us walk into the kill zone. Brennan's voice dripped condescension. Commander, the kid is panicking. Classic first mission jitters. I've got clear sight lines and I'm telling you, the world exploded. Gunfire erupted from every direction. Tracer rounds streaked through the darkness like angry fireflies. An RPG screamed overhead and detonated against a rock formation, showering Alpha Team with debris and shrapnel. Ambush! Ambush! Contact left! Contact right! They're everywhere! Petra hit the dirt as bullets snapped past her head, that distinctive crack whoosh sound of rounds missing by inches. All around her, SEALs scrambled for cover. The disciplined diamond formation collapsed into chaos. Bravo team, taking fire from the ridge. Alpha's pinned. Where the hell did they all come from? Brennan, Hollis screamed over the cacophony. I need that machine gun nest neutralized. Eastern Tower, now. Brennan set up behind a crumbled wall, his scope finding the target. He fired once, twice, both shots wide. God damn it, the wind shifted. I can't. He fired again, missed again. I can't make the shot. The machine gun in the eastern tower poured fire into Bravo team's position. Petra heard screaming. Someone was hit. Man down! Man down! Rodriguez is hit. Her father's voice echoed in her mind. When everything falls apart and they're out of options. Petra rolled behind a stone column and brought her rifle up. Through the scope, she found the machine gun nest. The shooter was good. Disciplined bursts, adjusting fire, keeping the SEALs pinned. 847 meters. Wind from the southwest at 22 kilometers per hour, gusting to 35. Heat shimmer creating mirage effect at the midpoint. She did the calculations in half a second. Adjustments her father had drilled into her through 1,000 practice sessions. Computations that had become muscle memory, instinct, breath. Commander, her voice cut through the chaos with unnatural calm. Request permission to engage. Hollis was pinned behind a broken wall, bullets chewing the stone inches from his head. His men were dying. Brennan couldn't make the shot. What choice did he have? Phantom Zero, engage. Petra exhaled. Between heartbeats, everything slowed. Her father's voice whispered, that's when the world holds still, mija. Between the heartbeats, that's when you take the shot. She fired. 847 meters away, the machine gunner's head snapped back. He crumpled over his weapon, dead before his brain registered the bullet. Before his body hit the ground, Petra had shifted to her second target, a fighter moving to take his place at the gun. Second shot, second kill. Third shot, a hostile with an RPG aimed at Alpha Team. dead before he could fire. Fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. In 47 seconds, Petra eliminated 7 ISIS fighters who had the SEALs pinned in a crossfire. Her hands moved with mechanical precision, working the bolt action, chambering rounds, settling the crosshairs, firing. No wasted motion, no hesitation, just the cold mathematics of death delivered at distance. The radio exploded with voices. "What the hell? Who's shooting?" "Those are headshots. All headshots. That's Phantom Zero." Brennan stared through his scope at the carnage, his face white. 7 shots, 7 kills, in conditions he couldn't read, at ranges he couldn't manage. For the first time since they'd mocked her on the helicopter, there was no laughter. Commander Hollis's voice came through the radio, different now. Respect had replaced dismissal. "Phantom Zero, good shooting. You are cleared hot. Repeat, you are weapons free." Petra chambered another round. The rifle was warm against her cheek, familiar, comforting. The desert wind carried the screams of dying men and the thunder of gunfire. She felt nothing, no fear, no hesitation, no doubt, just clarity, pure, crystalline clarity. "Copy that, Commander." Her voice was steady as a heartbeat. "I'm just getting started." But she wasn't just getting started. What Petra didn't tell anyone was that her body had already begun paying the price. Her core temperature, normally 96.8 degrees Fahrenheit, had dropped to 96.2 degrees Fahrenheit in the 15 minutes since insertion. The Syrian desert night was only about 50 degrees Fahrenheit, cold, but not dangerously so. Not for normal people, but Petra wasn't normal. Her body ran cold, burned calories trying to maintain even its below-average temperature. And now, lying on sand that was rapidly cooling, adrenaline flooding her system, making shot after impossible shot, her metabolism was in overdrive. She didn't notice yet, too focused on the targets, on the math, on keeping these men alive. 8 kill, a sniper on the Western Tower. 9, 10, 11, 3 fighters trying to flank Charlie Team. "Phantom Zero, this is Bravo lead." Quinn's voice strained with pain. "I've got hostile movement on my 6. Can't get a visual." Petra swung her scope, found the threat. 4 ISIS fighters circling behind Bravo Team's position, thinking they were hidden by the ruins. 4 shots, 2 seconds, 4 bodies. "Holy shit," Quinn's whisper carried across the radio. They're all down. She killed all 4. But the universe had other plans. The wind shifted. Not the gentle desert breeze they'd inserted into. Something else. Something wrong. Petra felt it before the instruments registered it. A pressure drop, temperature plummeting, the taste of electricity in the air. "Commander, we have incoming weather." Wade's voice cracked. "Sandstorm forming to the north." "No, wait, it's not sand, it's..." The blizzard hit like a freight train. In the Syrian desert, in November. A freak cold front colliding with warm air, creating conditions that shouldn't exist, dumping snow and ice onto sand that hadn't seen precipitation in 6 months. Within 30 seconds, visibility dropped to 20 meters. Temperature plunged from 50 degrees Fahrenheit to 18, -8 Celsius. The wind screamed at 68 kilometers per hour, gusting to 85. "All teams, fall back," Hollis shouted. "We can't operate in this." "Commander, we can't fall back." Quinn's voice was desperate. "The hostages, 15 minutes until detonation, remember? We abort now, they die." Through her scope, Petra could barely see 10 feet. The thermal imaging was useless. Snow created a white wall that blocked everything. The SEALs were pinned, unable to advance, unable to retreat, caught in a weather phenomenon that meteorologists would later call statistically impossible. And on the Eastern Tower, 3,187 meters away, Petra knew the exact distance because she'd ranged it earlier, filed it away in the back of her mind like her father had taught her. A machine gunner opened fire blind into the storm, hosing down Alpha Team's last known position with disciplined 3-round bursts. She heard the screaming over the radio. Couldn't see who was hit. Couldn't see anything. "Brennan, can you take that shot?" Hollis screamed. "I can't even see the tower. The scope's fogged. No one can shoot in this." Petra closed her eyes. "When you can't see," her father had whispered during winter training when she was 15, snow falling around them in the Virginia mountains, "you listen. Wind creates sound, 40 to 60 hertz. You can hear the pattern, read the gusts, know when the world holds still between them. That's when you fire." She'd thought he was crazy then. She understood now. Petra settled deeper into the rifle, eyes closed, and listened. The wind howled, but within the howl, harmonics, patterns, a language only she could speak because her father had taught her the syntax, the grammar, the poetry of moving air. 47 hertz, steady, a lull coming in 3, 2, 1. She opened her eyes for half a second, found the tower through the scope, barely visible, a ghost shape in the white chaos, more memory than vision, and fired between heartbeats. 3,187 meters. Through a blizzard, in sub-zero temperatures with her core body heat dropping toward dangerous levels. With crosswinds that would make a normal shot impossible at 300 meters, let alone 3,000. The impossible shot. The shot no one would believe. The shot that would make her legend. The machine gun stopped firing. Radio silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. Then, did someone just hit that gunner? "Confirmed kill," Petra said quietly. Her breath came out as vapor. She was so cold. "Eastern Tower neutralized." "Phantom Zero," Hollis said, and his voice carried something Petra had never heard from him before, would never hear again. Awe. Raw, unfiltered awe. "Did you just make a 3,000-meter shot in a fucking blizzard?" Petra didn't answer. She was already lining up her next target, listening to the wind like it was whispering secrets, reading the impossible with senses her father had taught her to trust when sight failed. The storm raged for 7 more minutes. In those 7 minutes, while the SEALs huddled behind whatever cover they could find and waited for the weather to pass, Petra fired 4 more times. 4 more impossible shots through conditions that every manual said made accurate shooting physically impossible. 4 more kills at ranges that shouldn't have been feasible even in perfect weather. 12, 13, 14, 15. When the storm finally passed as suddenly as it had arrived, meteorologists would later call it a microburst, a freak collision of atmospheric conditions that statistically happened once every 50 years, the SEALs were still alive. The advance could continue. And Petra Valdez had just done something no sniper in history had ever documented. Made precision kills at extreme range through a blizzard, using nothing but the sound of wind and muscle memory carved into her bones by a father who'd known she'd need it someday. But already her core temperature had dropped to 95.4 degrees Fahrenheit. Her body had paid for those shots, burned through calories, heat, pieces of herself she'd never get back. The payment, as her father had warned, had begun, and it was far from finished. Brennan's voice cut in over the radio, tight with something that might have been shame. "Commander, I need to reposition. I can't get angle on the compound entrance." "Negative, Brennan. You're too exposed." "Sir, someone needs to—" "I have it." Petra was already moving, though her legs felt strange beneath her. Heavy. "Commander, I'm advancing to secondary overwatch position, 200 meters closer to the compound. I'll have clear sight lines to the entrance and the underground bunker access." "Phantom Zero, that position is in the open. You'll be vulnerable." "I know, but your breach team needs cover, and Master Chief Brennan can't provide it from his current location." Silence on the radio, then Hollis's voice, heavy with reluctance. "Approved. But for God's sake, be careful." Petra ran. 200 meters of open ground, no cover. Every ISIS fighter in the compound could see her if they looked in the right direction. Smaller target, she thought, pushing her legs faster despite the cold seeping into her muscles. Faster than they expect. Keep moving. Bullets kicked up sand around her feet. She zigzagged, changed directions, never following a predictable pattern. Her father's training. You're 5'6" and 128, Mija. That's not a weakness, it's camouflage. No one expects the small one to be dangerous. She dove behind a ruined fountain and set up her rifle in one fluid motion. New position, new angles, new targets. Through her scope, she saw the compound entrance clearly now. Heavy steel doors, sandbag reinforcements, and beyond that, somewhere underground, 3 American journalists waiting to die. Commander, I'm in position. I have eyes on main entrance. Count 4 guards visible, probably more inside. Copy that, Phantom Zero. All teams prepare to advance on my mark. We breach in 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Petra used the time to study the environment, threat assessment, priority targets, potential complications. That's when she saw him. A man in black, standing on the compound roof, watching the battle through binoculars. He wasn't shooting, wasn't taking cover, just observing, like a general watching his troops from a hilltop. The ISIS commander. Petra's crosshairs found his chest. Easy shot. Less than 300 meters. Minimal wind. Clear line of fire. Her finger touched the trigger. Take him out, a voice whispered in her mind. Cut off the head and the body dies. But something stopped her. A memory. A conversation with her father, years ago, sitting on their porch in Virginia, while summer cicadas sang in the trees. Sometimes the obvious shot isn't the right shot, Petra. A dead commander becomes a martyr, rallies the troops, makes them fight harder. A captured commander becomes an intelligence goldmine, saves future lives. Always think 3 moves ahead. Chess, not checkers. She lifted her finger from the trigger. Commander Hollis. Go ahead, Phantom Zero. I have visual on what appears to be the ISIS cell leader. Rooftop position. I can take the shot. Negative. Hollis understood immediately. We want him alive if possible. Can you track his movement? Yes, sir. Do it. If he tries to escape or threatens the hostages, then you have authorization. Otherwise, we take him breathing. Understood. Petra kept her scope trained on the commander. He seemed calm. Too calm for a man whose operation was falling apart around him. She watched him speak into a radio, gesture to fighters below, direct the defense with the confidence of someone who believed he still controlled the situation. What are you planning? She wondered. What don't I see? The answer came 60 seconds later. Commander, Wade's voice was panicked. I'm picking up a radio transmission from inside the compound. They know about the underground bunker. They're moving the hostages. What? Where? I don't... Wait. Oh, God. Wade, report. They're not moving the hostages, sir. Wade's voice broke. They're rigging the bunker with explosives. They're going to blow it and kill everyone inside. Petra's blood went cold. How long? Based on the chatter, 15 minutes, maybe less. 15 minutes to breach a fortified compound, fight through God knew how many hostiles, locate an underground bunker, and defuse explosives. Impossible. All teams, advance now. Hollis's voice was steel. Move, move, move. The SEALs surged forward, cover fire from multiple positions, controlled chaos. Petra tracked targets through her scope, dropping hostiles before they could engage the advancing Americans. Kill 16, 17, 18. Her count was climbing, but so was something else, something she didn't recognize yet, didn't understand. Her hands were shaking, just slightly, just enough to notice. Her core temperature had dropped to 95.1 degrees Fahrenheit. 15 minutes, she thought, forcing her hands steady, taking another shot. 15 minutes wasn't enough, not against these numbers, not with the compound's defenses. The journalists were going to die. Unless Petra's eyes found the ISIS commander again. He was talking into a radio now, giving orders, probably coordinating the bunker detonation. If she could get closer, if she could find a position inside the compound perimeter, if she could provide precision support during the breach itself. It was insane, suicidal, everything her training told her not to do. She was already moving before she finished the thought. Phantom Zero, where are you going? Hollis's voice was sharp. I didn't authorize repositioning. Commander, your breach team won't make it in time, not with the resistance they're facing. I can provide interior overwatch from the eastern structure. Create enough confusion to give you the opening you need. That's inside the compound. You'll be surrounded. Yes, sir, I know. Phantom Zero, Petra, I'm ordering you to hold position. She kept running. Her name, not her call sign. The distance between Petra Valdez and Phantom Zero was closing, and she wasn't sure which one was real anymore, which one would survive the night. The radio went silent. Then Quinn's voice, weak but clear. Commander, let her go. What? She's Nate Valdez's daughter. She's better than any of us. Quinn coughed, the sound wet and painful. If anyone can pull this off, it's her. Hollis's response took a long time coming. Phantom Zero, you have 90 seconds to get into position. After that, we're coming in whether you're ready or not. His voice hardened. Don't make me regret this. Petra's legs burned as she sprinted toward the compound wall. 90 seconds. She could hear gunfire all around her, explosions, screaming, the machinery of war grinding men into nothing. Plenty of time, she thought, and almost laughed at the absurdity. Almost. She reached the wall and began to climb. 15 feet of ancient stone, crumbling mortar, gaps just wide enough for fingers and boots that were going numb from the cold. 12 seconds. That's how long it took her. 12 seconds to scale what should have taken 30, because there was no time for caution, no time for anything except the desperate knowledge that 3 people would die if she didn't move fast enough. At the top, she rolled over the crest and dropped into shadow on the other side. Her boots hit packed earth, and she was moving before the sound faded, rifle already coming up to her shoulder. 3 ISIS fighters stood 30 feet away, their backs to her, firing at the advancing SEALs. They never heard her coming, never saw her. Just 3 precise shots, 3 bodies dropping like puppets with cut strings. 19, 20, 21. Above her, the ISIS commander continued giving orders, unaware that death had climbed over his walls on quiet feet. Below her, 14 SEALs fought for their lives, unaware that their survival depended on a 26-year-old woman they'd laughed at 3 hours ago. A woman whose core temperature was now 94.8 degrees Fahrenheit and dropping, whose body was eating itself to stay functional, whose father's gift was demanding its payment in real time. And somewhere in an underground bunker, 3 American journalists prayed for a miracle. Petra Valdez was about to become that miracle, or die trying. Petra's fingers found purchase in the ancient stone. 12 seconds. That's how long it took her to scale the 15-foot wall. Her rifle banged against her back with each pull upward, the strap cutting into her shoulder, but she didn't slow down. At the top, she rolled over the crest and dropped into shadow on the other side. Her boots hit packed earth, and she was moving before the sound faded, rifle already coming up to her shoulder. 3 ISIS fighters stood 30 feet away, their backs to her, firing at the advancing SEALs. They never heard her coming, never saw her, just 3 precise shots, 3 bodies dropping like puppets with cut strings. Phantom Zero is inside the compound. She kept her voice low, controlled. Eastern sector clear, moving to secondary structure. Hollis's response was clipped. Copy. Breach team is 60 seconds out. Give us a path. A path through a compound crawling with terrorists while a bomb ticked down somewhere beneath her feet. Easy. Just like practice. Except practice didn't shoot back, didn't scream when it died, didn't make her core temperature drop another degree. 95.4 degrees Fahrenheit now. She still didn't notice. Petra moved along the interior wall, staying in shadow. Her father had taught her to read movement patterns, to predict where enemies would look and when. These fighters were disciplined but predictable. They expected threats from outside, not inside. Their mistake. Two more fighters emerged from a doorway 20 feet ahead. Petra fired before they raised their weapons. Both fell. That made 5 down inside the compound. Eastern approach clear. Breach team, you're clear to the main door. She heard the explosion as the SEALs blew the compound entrance. Gunfire erupted inside the main building. Shouts in Arabic, screams. We're in! Heavy resistance! Wade, where's that bunker? Underground access should be through the central corridor. Look for stairs going down. Petra climbed to the second floor of the eastern structure, hands finding handholds she couldn't see in the darkness. Muscle memory and instinct guiding her. Better angles from up here, better sightlines. Through a shattered window, she could see directly into the main building's ground floor. What she saw made her breath catch. At least 20 ISIS fighters fortified inside, using concrete barriers and overturned furniture as cover. They had the SEALs pinned at the entrance, and behind them, she could see it now, a heavy steel door in the floor, the bunker access. Between the SEALs and that door stood an army. Commander, I have eyes on your position. Her voice remained steady despite what she was seeing. 20+ hostiles between you and the bunker entrance. They're dug in hard. Tell me something I don't know, Phantom Zero. Hollis's voice was strained. Gunfire nearly drowned him out. Lieutenant Wade is hit. We can't push through. Petra scanned the interior. The fighters were clustered in groups, using overlapping fields of fire. Classic defensive formation. Impossible to assault without taking heavy casualties. But they had gaps, small ones, spaces between the barriers where a precise shooter could thread a needle. Commander, I can thin them out, but I need you to draw their attention. Make them focus on the entrance. We're already doing that. More. I need them looking your way, not mine. Silence. Then Quinn's voice, tight with pain. Brennan, suppressive fire. Everything you've got. Keep their heads down. The gunfire from the entrance intensified. Hundreds of rounds poured into the building. The ISIS fighters ducked behind their barriers, focused entirely on the threat in front of them. They never saw the threat above. Petra fired. Her first shot took a fighter through the top of his skull as he crouched behind a concrete barrier. The angle was impossible, almost straight down through a 6-inch gap between the barrier and a support pillar. She shifted, fired again. Another kill. The fighters started to panic. They couldn't see where the shots were coming from. Men were dying around them, and they had no target to shoot back at. No way to return fire, just death arriving from nowhere. Sniper! Sniper! They screamed. Where? Where is he? They looked up, looked around, swept the windows with their rifles. But Petra had already moved to a different window. Different angle. Different targets. 3 more shots. 3 more kills. What the hell is happening in there? Quinn's voice was incredulous. They're dropping like flies. Phantom Zero is happening, Hollis said, and there was something in his voice now that hadn't been there before. Something like awe. All teams, advance. Push through. The SEALs surged forward. The ISIS defensive line, already in chaos from Petra's precision fire, collapsed under the assault. Petra kept shooting. Kill 19, 20, 21. Her rifle clicked empty. Magazine change. 2 seconds. Back on target. Bunker door! I see it! Wade shouted. Commander, we're almost... An explosion rocked the building. Not from outside, from below. What was that? They're detonating charges. They're collapsing the tunnels. Petra's heart stopped. If ISIS destroyed the bunker access while the hostages were still inside. How long? Hollis screamed. I don't know. Minutes, maybe less. Petra made a decision. Later, she wouldn't be able to explain why. Instinct. Training. Her father's voice whispering in her ear. She jumped. 15 feet down from the second-floor window. She hit the ground hard, rolled, came up running. Her right ankle screamed in protest, but she ignored it. The bunker door was 50 feet away. Between her and it stood 4 ISIS fighters who had survived the assault. They saw her coming and raised their weapons. Petra shot 2 of them while running. Full sprint. Impossible shots, but she made them anyway. The rifle bucked against her shoulder, brass casings spinning through the air, catching light like gold coins. The third fighter got his rifle up. She was too close to use hers effectively, so she didn't. She hit him at full speed, driving her shoulder into his chest. He outweighed her by 100 pounds. It didn't matter. Momentum carried them both into the wall. She heard bones crack, his, not hers, and he went down, gasping for air that wouldn't come. The fourth fighter grabbed her from behind, massive arms around her throat, crushing pressure. Petra couldn't breathe, couldn't reach her rifle, couldn't break free. Her vision started to darken at the edges. This is how I die, she thought. 3 feet from the door, 3 feet from saving them. Her father's voice one more time. Use everything, mija. Everything is a weapon. Her hand found the knife on her belt. Standard issue, 7-inch blade. She drove it backward into the fighter's thigh. He screamed and his grip loosened. Just enough. Petra spun, pulled the knife free, and opened his throat in one motion. He fell. She stood there, covered in blood that wasn't hers, gasping for air. Her hands were shaking now, not slightly, violently, and she was cold, so cold. Phantom Zero! Hollis was beside her suddenly, the breach team pouring into the room behind him. Jesus Christ, are you? The door! She pointed with a hand that wouldn't stop trembling. Open the door! Hollis stared at her for 1 second, taking in the blood, the shaking, the 4 bodies at her feet. Then he nodded to his team. Brennan, blow it! The charges were set and detonated in 10 seconds. The steel door blew inward with a concussive blast that Petra felt in her chest. Go, go, go! The SEALs poured down the stairs. Petra followed, rifle up despite her trembling hands, despite the cold that was seeping into her bones, despite the fact that she could barely feel her fingers anymore. The bunker was dark and smoke-filled. Emergency lighting cast everything in red. And there in the center of the room, kneeling with their hands bound, were 3 journalists. 2 men and a woman, alive. But they weren't alone. Standing behind them, a detonator in his hand, was the man in black. The ISIS commander Petra had seen on the roof. His face was calm. His thumb rested on the button. Stop! His English was heavily accented but clear. 1 more step and they die. You die. We all die together. The SEALs froze. Petra counted the distance. 20 feet. Too far to rush him before he pressed the button. Too close for a safe shot with hostages in the way. Lower your weapons. The commander smiled. Slowly, or I press this and we meet Allah together. Hollis's jaw tightened. You press that button, you die too. I am already dead. We are all martyrs here. The only question is how many Americans die with us. Commander, Brennan's voice was barely a whisper. I don't have a shot. The hostages are blocking my angle. I know. Sir, what do we... I said I know. The journalist woman started crying, silent tears streaming down her face. She knew she was about to die. They all did. Petra studied the scene. The commander was using the hostages as human shields. He was positioned behind them, only his head and shoulders visible. And his hand. The hand holding the detonator. Impossible shot, she thought. If I miss by an inch, I hit a hostage. If I hit his body instead of his hand, he triggers the bomb as he falls. But if she did nothing, they all died anyway. Commander Hollis, her voice was steady. Somehow, despite everything, her voice was steady. I need you to distract him. Hollis's eyes snapped to her. What? Talk to him. Keep his eyes on you. Give me 3 seconds. Petra, what are you? 3 seconds, sir. Trust me. Hollis held her gaze. This woman, this 26-year-old who had killed more men tonight than some operators killed in their entire careers, who had climbed walls and run through gunfire and fought hand-to-hand with men twice her size. He nodded. Hey. Hollis stepped forward, hands raised. Let's talk about this. The commander's attention shifted. His eyes focused on Hollis, just for a moment, just long enough. Petra raised her rifle, not at the commander's head, not at his chest, at his hand, at the detonator. A target smaller than a tennis ball, held in a moving grip, partially obscured by shadow, 20 feet away. Her hands were shaking. Her core temperature was 94.8 degrees Fahrenheit. Her vision was starting to blur at the edges. But between heartbeats, her father whispered, "That's when the world holds still." She fired. The bullet crossed 20 feet in less than a tenth of a second. It struck the detonator dead center, shattering it into fragments and taking 2 of the commander's fingers with it. He screamed. Brennan moved first. His shot took the commander in the shoulder, spinning him away from the hostages. Quinn was second, tackling the man to the ground. Hollis was third, securing the commander's arms before he could reach for another weapon. It was over. Petra lowered her rifle. Her whole body was shaking now, not just her hands, everything. The adrenaline was fading and the cold was rushing in to fill the space it left behind. Her legs gave out. She hit the ground hard, the rifle clattering beside her. Voices shouted her name, but they sounded distant, underwater. Someone was rolling her onto her back. Someone was checking her pulse. Her skin is ice cold. Get a blanket, now! Petra, stay with me. Petra. But Petra was already falling into darkness, her father's voice following her down. Gifts demand payment, Mija. They always do. The last thing she saw before consciousness fled was the female journalist's face, staring at her with something that looked like reverence. The last thing she thought was, did I save them? Then nothing. 22 days later, Petra Valdez sat alone in her Georgetown University dorm room and tried to remember how to sleep. It had been 3 weeks since Syria, 3 weeks since she'd slept more than 2 hours at a stretch, 3 weeks since she'd stopped seeing the faces of the 21 men she'd killed every time she closed her eyes. 21. The official count. Each one documented, verified, confirmed. 21 human beings who had woken up that morning in Syria and gone to bed in the ground because of her. The university psychologist said it was normal. Post-traumatic stress, common in combat veterans. It would pass with time and therapy, but the psychologist didn't know what Petra knew, didn't understand what she understood. It wasn't guilt that kept her awake. It was the absence of guilt, the hollow place inside her where remorse should have been. She had killed 21 people and felt nothing. That was what terrified her. Her phone buzzed. Encrypted message from Agent Winston Calloway, her CIA handler. She almost ignored it, almost, but some part of her, the part that was still a soldier, still an operator, couldn't let an encrypted message go unread. She opened it. Weather clearing, hiking trip planned, details tonight. Another mission. Of course there was another mission. There was always another mission. Petra set the phone down and stared at her hands. They looked normal in the lamplight, steady, strong, but she knew better. She'd been to the range 3 times since returning from Syria. 3 times she'd set up simple shots, targets she could have hit in her sleep a month ago, and missed. Not by much. 4 inches left, 6 inches right. But in her world, 4 inches was the difference between a saved life and a dead hostage. 6 inches was the difference between precision and failure. Her hands trembled when she shot now, just slightly, just enough to matter. The door she'd walked through in Syria, the one her father had warned her about, the one that demanded payment in blood and cold. She couldn't find her way back through it. She was trapped on the other side, in a place where sleep wouldn't come and shots wouldn't land, and 21 faces haunted the space behind her eyelids. The phone rang. Not encrypted this time, just a regular call from an unknown number. Petra almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Instinct, maybe, or desperation. Hello? Miss Valdez. The voice was male, older, with a Virginia accent softened by time. My name is Augustus Thorne. You don't know me, but I knew your father. Petra sat up straighter. How did you get this number? I have friends in low places. A pause. Your father came to see me 6 months before Yemen. Did he ever mention me? No. I didn't think so. Nate was good at keeping secrets. Another pause. Longer this time. Miss Valdez, I'm calling because I think I can help you. I know what you're going through right now. The sleeplessness, the tremors, the feeling that you've left part of yourself somewhere you can't get back to. Petra's breath caught. How could you possibly? Because I went through the same thing 30 years ago, and because your father came to me when he was going through it 20 years ago. Thorne's voice was gentle but firm. There's a place we go, Miss Valdez, those of us who cross certain lines. A place where the normal rules don't apply anymore, where we can do things other people can't. But coming back from that place, that's the hard part. That's what breaks most of us. Who are you? Sergeant Major Augustus Thorne, retired, or dishonorably discharged if you want to be technical about it. I was a SEAL sniper for 18 years before the brass decided I was teaching recruits things they weren't supposed to learn. He paused. I live in the Blue Ridge Mountains now, alone, quiet, but I still remember how to help people find their way back. Petra said nothing, couldn't say anything. This stranger on the phone was describing things she hadn't told anyone, things she'd barely admitted to herself. There's a letter coming to your address, Thorne continued. Should arrive tomorrow. In it, you'll find directions to my cabin. Come if you want, don't come if you don't. But Miss Valdez, Petra, your father was one of the best men I ever knew. And if you're half the operator I think you are, you're going through hell right now trying to figure out how to be human again. I don't need, yes you do, you just don't know it yet. His voice softened. I failed your father, Petra. I taught him how to go to that place, but I didn't teach him how to come back. I won't fail you too. The line went dead. Petra sat in the silence of her dorm room, holding the phone, feeling something crack open inside her chest. Not breaking, opening, like a door she hadn't known was there. The letter arrived the next morning, just as Thorne had promised. Inside was a hand-drawn map, a set of coordinates, and a single sentence written in careful script. When you're ready to heal, little star, follow these home. Little Star, her mother's name for her, a name only family would know. Petra stared at those 2 words for a long time. Then she packed a bag, got in her car, and drove 7 hours into the mountains. The cabin sat at the end of a dirt road that barely deserved the name. Surrounded by pine trees and silence, it looked like something from another century. Smoke rose from a stone chimney. A figure sat on the porch in a rocking chair. Petra parked and got out. The man on the porch stood. He was tall, probably 6'2", with a white beard and eyes that had seen too much. He walked with a slight limp, favoring his left leg. Petra Valdez, he said, not a question, a statement. Sergeant Major Thorne. Just Gus. He studied her face. You look like Nate. Same eyes, same way of standing like you're always ready for something to go wrong. My father really came here? 6 months before Yemen, sat right where you're standing and told me he'd crossed a line he couldn't uncross. That he'd learned to shoot in conditions that shouldn't be possible, to read wind patterns through sound, to drop his core temperature deliberately to avoid thermal detection. Gus's eyes were sad. I taught him all of that. Advanced techniques that JSOC banned because they push human physiology past safe limits. I thought I was making him better. Turns out I was just making him more alone. Petra felt something tighten in her chest. He never told me any of this. Of course not, because he knew if he told you, you'd try to do the same thing, push yourself the same way, pay the same price. Gus stepped down from the porch. And here you are, 26 years old, 21 confirmed kills in a single mission. Core temperature so low you nearly died from hypothermia in 50-degree weather. Sound familiar? How do you know about, I have friends in low places, remember? I know what happened in Syria. I know you made an impossible shot through a blizzard at 3,200 meters. I know you can't sleep now, can't shoot straight, can't figure out how to feel human again. He paused. I know because I've been there. And I know because your father sat right here and told me the same things before he deployed to Yemen. Petra's voice came out as a whisper. Did you teach him how to get better? No. Gus's face was heavy with regret. I taught him more techniques, more ways to push further. I didn't teach him the most important lesson. What lesson? How to come back. How to survive what you become when you cross that line. Gus gestured to the cabin. Come inside, we have a lot of work to do. For 3 weeks, Petra stayed in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Gus didn't teach her to shoot, didn't drill tactics or weapons handling or fieldcraft. Instead, he taught her something harder, how to live with what she'd done. They talked for hours each day about Syria, about Yemen, about the men Gus had killed in his 18 years as a SEAL, and how each one had taken a small piece of him that he never got back. The secret, Gus said one evening, sitting on the porch as the sun set behind the mountains, is accepting that you can't get those pieces back. You can't undo what you've done. You can't unfeel what you felt, or in your case, what you haven't felt. So what do I do? Petra asked. Just accept that I'm broken? You're not broken. You're changed. There's a difference. Gus rocked slowly in his chair. Broken things don't work anymore. Changed things work differently. The question isn't how to go back to who you were. The question is how to become someone new. Someone who can carry what you've carried and still move forward. He told her about his wife, how she died of cancer 22 years ago, the same age Petra's mother had been. How he'd almost eaten his gun in the months after, drowning in grief and survivor's guilt and the weight of all the killing he'd done. What stopped you? Petra asked. I realized that if I died, all those pieces of me I'd lost, all the humanity I'd traded for precision, for mission success, for following orders, they'd be gone forever. But if I lived, if I learned to carry the weight instead of being crushed by it, maybe I could give those pieces to someone else, pass them on, make them mean something. He looked at her. Your father gave you a gift, Petra, not just the ability to shoot, but the discipline to choose when to shoot and when not to. That's what I should have taught him. That's what I'm teaching you now. Slowly, over those 3 weeks, Petra began to sleep again. An hour at first, then 2, then 4. The tremors in her hands lessened. The faces behind her eyelids faded from sharp to soft, from accusatory to simply present. Gus taught her breathing exercises, meditation techniques, ways to quiet the part of her mind that kept replaying Syria on an endless loop. But he also taught her something else, something unexpected. You can't go back to who you were before Syria, he said during their last morning together. That person is gone. But you can choose who you become next. You can be someone who kills without thinking, who treats every problem like a target to eliminate. Or you can be someone who uses that gift, that terrible, beautiful gift, to protect people, to make the hard choices that others can't make, to be the person who decides when violence is necessary and when it isn't. How do I know which choice is right? Petra asked. You'll know, because you'll ask yourself the question your father never learned to ask. Am I doing this for justice or revenge, for protection or pride? Gus stood, his old body creaking. You're healed enough to choose now, Petra. Not healed enough to be reckless, but healed enough to know the difference. That afternoon, Petra packed her bag and prepared to return to Georgetown. Gus walked her to her car. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. Don't thank me yet." Gus's expression was serious. The real test comes when they call you for another mission. When they put you back in that place where the old rules don't apply. That's when you'll find out if any of this stuck. "What if I fail?" "Then you come back here and we start over." He smiled slightly. "But you won't fail. You're Nate Valdez's daughter. Stubborn runs in your blood." Petra drove back to Georgetown with something she hadn't felt in 3 weeks. Hope. Not the bright, naive hope of someone who hasn't seen darkness, but the quiet, steady hope of someone who has seen darkness and chosen to find light anyway. The call came 2 days after her return. Agent Calloway's voice was tense on the encrypted line. "We have a situation. 4 American aid workers grabbed by al-Shabaab outside Mogadishu. They're being held in a fortified compound, multiple hostiles, high-value target on site." Petra's hand tightened on the phone. "What kind of high-value target?" "Khalid Rahman, senior al-Shabaab commander, former Somali military intelligence." Calloway paused. "Petra, there's something else. According to our intercepts, Rahman was in Yemen 18 months ago. Same day, same location where your father died." The world stopped moving. "He was there?" "Yes. We don't know if he pulled the trigger, but he was definitely present. This could be your chance to get answers." Petra closed her eyes, saw her father's face, heard Gus's voice. "Are you doing this for justice or revenge?" "When do we deploy?" she asked. 48 hours. Petra, I need to know you can handle this. If Rahman was involved in your father's death, I can handle it. Are you sure? Because if you can't, I said I can handle it, Winston. Her voice was steady, certain. I'm not going for revenge. I'm going for the truth. There's a difference. Calloway was quiet for a moment. Okay, I believe you. Brief at 0600, day after tomorrow. After he hung up, Petra sat in her dorm room and called Gus. They're sending me to Somalia, she said without preamble. The man who might have killed my father is there. And? Gus's voice was calm, expectant. And I need to know, not to kill him, not to get revenge, but to know what happened, to understand why. That's the right answer, little star. She could hear the smile in his voice, but knowing the right answer and living it are two different things. When you have him in your crosshairs, when it would be so easy to just squeeze the trigger and end it, that's when you'll find out who you really are. What if I choose wrong? Then you'll have to live with it, just like all of us do. A pause. But Petra, I don't think you'll choose wrong. I think you'll choose hard, and that's better. Petra hung up and began to pack. This time, though, she packed differently. Not just the gear she'd need for the mission, but the lessons she'd learned in the mountains, the breathing exercises, the question she needed to ask herself, the understanding that some choices couldn't be undone. She was going to Somalia. She was going to find Khalid Rahman. She was going to look through her scope at the man who might have killed her father. And then she was going to choose. Not revenge, not justice, but truth, even if the truth destroyed her. The Osprey's engines hummed a different frequency over the Indian Ocean. Darker, heavier, like the machine itself knew they were flying towards something that couldn't be undone. Petra sat in the same position she'd occupied 3 months ago on the flight to Syria. Rear of the cabin, rifle across her lap, surrounded by the same 14 SEALs. But everything else had changed. Senior Chief Decker Quinn sat beside her now, instead of mocking her from across the aisle. His daughter was 3 months old. He'd shown Petra pictures before they boarded, a tiny thing with Quinn's eyes and his wife's smile. Named her Petra Elizabeth, he'd said quietly, after the woman who taught me to check my assumptions. Master Chief Royce Brennan was different too. He'd requested to sit through Petra's pre-mission brief, listening as she explained thermal patterns and acoustic wind reading with the attention of a student, not a skeptic. Afterward, he'd approached her privately. Syria changed me, he'd said. Watching you make shots I couldn't make, saving lives I couldn't save. I realized I'd spent 20 years thinking competence was about experience and rank. Took a 26-year-old woman to teach me it's about humility. Now Brennan studied terrain maps with the intensity of someone who knew he'd missed crucial details before and was determined never to miss them again. Commander Garrett Hollis moved through the cabin, checking gear, offering quiet words of encouragement. When he reached Petra, he crouched down to her eye level. "You good for this?" "Yes, sir. Rahman was there when your father died. That's not easy intel to carry." His eyes searched her face. "If you need to sit this one out, I need to be there, Commander, not to kill him, to understand." Hollis studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Your father would be proud, not just of your shooting, of your discipline." After he moved on, Petra pulled out her father's mirror and studied her reflection in the dim cabin light. She looked older than she had 3 months ago. Harder. The girl who'd boarded the Osprey to Syria had been trying to prove something. The woman flying to Somalia was trying to understand something. There was a difference. The insertion was smooth. No ambush this time, no chaos. Just professional operators moving through the Mogadishu outskirts like shadows, silent and purposeful. Petra established overwatch on the roof of an abandoned school 400 meters from the target compound. Through her scope, she counted hostiles, 23 visible. Vehicle patrols on a predictable rotation. Guard towers manned but undisciplined. The sentries were smoking, talking, not watching their sectors properly. And then she saw him. Khalid Rahman emerged from the central building, surrounded by 4 bodyguards. Even at this distance, even in the darkness, Petra recognized him from the intelligence photos. Scarred face, tall, moving with the confidence of someone who believed he was untouchable. The man who might have killed her father. Petra's crosshairs settled on his forehead. 385 meters. Minimal wind. Clear shot. She could take it right now, before the mission even started, before anyone could stop her. Her finger touched the trigger. In her mind, she heard Gus's voice. "Are you doing this for justice or revenge?" And beneath that, her father's voice from the letter. "Gifts demand payment." She took a breath, held it. Her finger stayed on the trigger. Rahman laughed at something one of his bodyguards said. The sound didn't carry this far, but Petra could see it in his body language. Relaxed. Human. She thought about the female journalist in Syria, crying because she thought she was about to die. Thought about the 3 people Rahman's organization had kidnapped. Aid workers who'd come to Somalia to help, to heal, to make things better. Thought about her father, alone on a ridge in Yemen, holding position for 52 minutes while enemies closed in. I need to know, Petra thought. I need to understand why he died. If I kill Rahman now, those answers die with him. She lifted her finger from the trigger. Commander Hollis, her voice was steady on the radio. I have visual on Rahman. Do you have a shot? Yes, sir. Clean shot. Hold fire. We need him alive for intelligence. Petra exhaled slowly. Copy that, Commander. Holding. It should have been harder. Should have torn her apart to let him live. But instead she felt something like peace settle over her. This was the right choice. Not the easy choice. Not the satisfying choice, but the right one. All teams, Hollis's voice came through. We breach in 60 seconds. Phantom Zero, I need you to cover our approach. Roger that. The assault began with controlled precision. No surprises this time. No unexpected resistance. Just professional operators executing a well-planned mission. Petra provided overwatch, dropping targets that threatened her team. Each shot was calculated, necessary, clean. No wasted rounds, no excess force. Kill 1, a fighter raising an RPG toward Bravo team. Kill 2, a sniper setting up on the East Tower. Kill 3, a runner heading for the vehicle-mounted machine gun. Each one justified. Each one necessary. each one adding to the weight she carried. 24 now, total career kills. 24 human beings who would never go home. The breach went smoothly until it didn't. Hostages located. Lieutenant Wade's voice cracked with relief. Basement level, all 4 accounted for. Copy that. All teams, begin extraction. The explosion cut Hollis off. Massive. Close. The ground shook even from Petra's position, 400 meters away. IED, north side. Brennan is down. Petra's scope swung to the north side of the compound. She could see rubble, dust, and beneath it, Brennan's leg, visible and unmoving. He's trapped. I can't lift it alone. Quinn's voice was panicked. Through her scope, Petra tracked movement. Rahman and 2 bodyguards, running toward a vehicle on the south side, escaping. She had maybe 5 seconds before they reached it and disappeared forever. 5 seconds to choose. She could shoot Rahman now, end him, get the revenge she'd traveled 5,000 miles for. The man who might have killed her father, running away, and she had a perfect shot. Or she could help Brennan. Her father's voice whispered in her memory. He held position for 52 minutes, saving 12 lives. He hadn't stopped to get revenge. He'd chosen to save lives, even knowing it would cost him his own. Petra abandoned her rifle and ran. 400 meters at a full sprint. Her lungs burned. Her legs screamed. Bullets kicked up dirt around her, but she didn't slow down, didn't zigzag, just ran straight toward Brennan because every second mattered. She reached Quinn, who was straining against a concrete pillar that had Brennan pinned from the waist down. On 3, she shouted. 1, 2, 3. They lifted together. The pillar moved 6 inches. Enough. Brennan screamed as they pulled him free, his left leg clearly broken, possibly crushed. Why didn't you shoot Rahman? Brennan gasped through the pain. You had him. I saw you track him through your scope. Petra looked at him. This man who had mocked her, doubted her, called her a child. This man who had learned humility and now taught it to others. This man who had a wife and 2 daughters waiting for him in Virginia. Because you're alive, she said simply, and he's not worth your death. They dragged Brennan behind cover. Petra looked south toward where Rahman's vehicle had been. It was gone, disappeared into the Mogadishu sprawl. She felt no rage, no regret, just the certainty that she'd chosen correctly, even if it meant losing the answers she'd come for. Phantom Zero, Hollis's voice crackled through her radio. We got him. Petra's breath caught. What? Rahman's vehicle hit an IED 400 meters south. He's alive, in custody. Guess the universe wanted you to have both. Save Brennan and get your answers. Petra closed her eyes and let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Maybe the universe did want her to have both. Or maybe choosing right had its own rewards. They brought Rahman to a small room in the compound's western building. He knelt with his hands zip-tied behind his back, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. When Petra entered, he looked up at her with eyes that were surprisingly calm. You're Nathaniel Valdez's daughter, he said. Not a question, a statement. Petra stopped a few feet away. How did you know? I had you in my scope twice tonight. Once on the school roof, when you could have killed me but didn't. Once when I was running to the vehicle, and again you held your fire. He smiled slightly. Your father made the same choices, always choosing to save rather than to kill. I see his discipline in you. You were in Yemen. Petra's voice was steady, but her hands were clenched into fists at her sides. 18 months ago, the day my father died. Yes, I was there. Did you kill him? Rahman met her eyes. No. Then who did? Someone American, someone professional, someone your father should have been able to trust. He paused. May I tell you a story first? Petra nodded, not trusting her voice. 15 years ago, I was not what I am now. I was Somali military intelligence, working with American forces against Al-Qaeda in East Africa. I had a daughter. She was 8 years old. Her name was Amina. Rahman's voice softened at the name. There was an operation in Baghdad, surveillance gone wrong. Amina was with me. I know I should not have brought her, but her mother had died and I had no one else. The operation was compromised. Firefight in the streets. Amina was caught in the crossfire. He looked down at his bound hands. Your father was there, part of the extraction team. He saw Amina, saw she was a child, saw she was wounded. He could have left her. She was the daughter of an intelligence officer from a hostile nation. No one would have blamed him for leaving her. Rahman's voice thickened. But he didn't. He ran into the open, scooped her up, and carried her to safety. Took a bullet in his left shoulder doing it. I watched through my scope as he handed her to medics, made sure she was stable, and then returned to his mission as if he hadn't just saved an enemy's child. Petra's throat tightened. She'd seen the scar on her father's shoulder. He'd told her it was from Baghdad, but never explained how he got it. Why didn't you ever thank him? Because by the time Amina recovered, I had been reassigned. And then the wars changed me, made me into what I am now, something darker, something I would not want my daughter to see. Rahman looked up at her. But I never forgot the debt I owed Nathaniel Valdez. When I saw him in Yemen 18 months ago, through my scope on that ridge, I thought about Amina, about the mercy he showed when he could have chosen violence. So you didn't shoot him. I watched him for 37 minutes, magnificent shooting. He held off an entire company by himself, buying time for your SEALs to extract. I could have ended him at any moment, but I owed him a life, his daughter's life in payment for mine. Petra felt tears burning behind her eyes. But someone did shoot him. Yes, from the East Ridge. The position your own intelligence had marked as clear. Rahman leaned forward. Your father was investigating something, Petra, something dangerous. Black site operations, torture, civilian casualties that were being covered up. He was going to testify before the Senate Intelligence Committee about what JSOC was doing in Yemen and Somalia, about operations that violated every law of war. The room felt suddenly smaller, airless. Someone wanted him silenced, Rahman continued. Someone with access to intelligence reports, someone who knew exactly where your father would be and when. Someone who could arrange for that position to be marked as clear when it wasn't. Who? Petra's voice came out as a whisper. The shooter's name was Marcus Webb, former CIA, freelance now. But Webb doesn't work without payment. Someone hired him, someone with resources and power. Rahman paused. Your father was killed by his own people, Petra, not by enemies. By men who wore the same flag, swore the same oaths, and decided that truth was more dangerous than lies. Petra's legs gave out. She sat down hard on a crate, head spinning. How do you know all this? Because I have done business with Webb, because I have contacts in places you would not expect, and because when I learned what really happened in Yemen, I kept the information, knowing that someday Nathaniel Valdez's daughter would come looking for answers. He smiled sadly. I owed your father a debt. This is how I pay it, by giving you the truth. Webb, Petra repeated. Where is he? Northern Virginia. He has a safe house near Quantico. I can give you the address. But Petra, Rahman's voice hardened. The man who hired Webb, the man who ordered your father's death, he is still in power. Deputy Director Harrison Moss, JSOC Deputy Operations. He ran the black sites. He covered up the civilian deaths. And when your father threatened to expose him, he had him killed. Petra stood, her legs steadier now. She walked to Rahman and crouched in front of him, looking into his eyes. Why tell me this? What do you gain? Peace, Rahman said simply. I am tired, Petra, tired of war, tired of killing, tired of being the monster I became. Your father showed me that even in war, there can be mercy. By telling you the truth, I honor his memory. And perhaps if Allah is merciful, I find some redemption for the things I have done." Petra studied his face for a long moment. Then she stood and called for Hollis. "He's told me everything," she said when the commander entered. "I need you to put him in protective custody, and I need to talk to Agent Calloway. Now." 7 months. That's how long it took to build the case against Marcus Webb and Harrison Moss. 7 months of Petra working with the FBI, providing testimony, connecting dots. 7 months of late nights and early mornings, of evidence gathering and witness interviews, of building something that couldn't be torn down by lawyers and classified documents and national security objections. Webb was easier. When the FBI raided his safe house in Virginia, they found everything. Financial records showing $2 million deposited 2 days after her father's death. Communications with Moss encrypted but recoverable. And worst of all, a journal. Webb kept a journal of every job he'd done, every person he'd killed. On page 47, in neat handwriting, Nathaniel Valdez, Yemen, East Ridge position, 1,847 meters. One shot, head. Client, HM. Payment received. Target never saw it coming. HM Harrison Moss. They arrested Webb on a Tuesday morning. He resisted. FBI snipers engaged. Marcus Webb died in a shootout in the same house where he'd planned her father's murder. Petra watched from 300 meters away, through her scope, as it happened. She had no shot, too many friendlies in the way, but she watched anyway. Watched the man who'd killed her father take rounds from federal agents and go down bleeding. She felt nothing, no satisfaction, no closure. Just a hollow acknowledgement that one thread of the story had ended. Moss was harder. He had resources, connections, classified documents he could hide behind. But Petra had something stronger, the truth, and the willingness to make it public. She testified before a closed session of the Senate Intelligence Committee, told them everything, about her father's investigation, about the black sites, about the cover-up and the assassination, and the years of lies that followed. When they tried to classify her testimony, to bury it in the name of national security, Petra did something unexpected. She went public. Sat for an interview with 60 Minutes, told the whole story, holding her father's mirror in her hands as she spoke. The mirror he'd carried through 3 deployments. The mirror that had survived his death, but not his truth. "My father was murdered," she told America, "because he believed in following the law, even when it was inconvenient. Because he believed that the uniform didn't give us permission to torture, to kill civilians, to become the monsters we were supposed to be fighting. And the men who killed him are still in power, still making decisions, still putting soldiers in impossible positions, and then silencing them when they try to do the right thing." The interview went viral. Within 48 hours, Harrison Moss was removed from his position. Within a week, formal charges were filed. Within a month, he was in custody, awaiting trial. The media called Petra a hero. Phantom Zero exposes JSOC corruption. The woman who'd become famous for killing was now famous for revealing the truth. But Petra didn't feel like a hero. She felt tired. Tired of killing, tired of secrets, tired of carrying weight that kept getting heavier no matter how much she set down. 1 year after Somalia, Petra Valdez stood in front of a new building on the outskirts of Richmond, Virginia, and read the sign above the door. Valdez Institute for Precision Ethics. Not a shooting school, not a tactical training center, something different, something her father would have built if he'd lived. Inside, 45 students, military, law enforcement, private security, sat in a classroom waiting for her. On the wall behind her desk hung a quote from her father's last letter. "The question isn't whether you'll pay, the question is whether you'll survive the paying." Petra walked to the front of the room and set her rifle on the desk. Not her sniper rifle, that was retired now, locked in a case in her apartment. This was a teaching rifle, unloaded, a prop for demonstration. "Lesson 1, she said, looking at the 45 faces watching her. The hardest shot is the one you don't take. She projected an image on the screen behind her, a crosshair on a target. You have a clean shot. Target is confirmed enemy combatant. No civilians in the area. Perfect conditions. Your spotter confirms the shot. Your commander authorizes engagement. She paused. But the target is carrying a wounded person on his back. Do you fire? The students began to debate. Some argued yes, the target was still a valid threat. Others argued no, the wounded person changed the calculation. Petra let them argue for 5 minutes, then held up her hand. There's no right answer, she said, not in the way you think. What matters is the process. Are you shooting because you're supposed to? Because it's easy? Because everyone else would? Or are you shooting because you've made a conscious decision that this specific act of violence, in this specific moment, is necessary and just? She walked to the window and looked out at the training grounds. My father taught me to shoot. He taught me wind reading, ballistics, trigger control, all the technical skills. But the most important thing he taught me was when not to shoot, how to carry the weight of the shots I did take, how to survive what I became when I crossed certain lines. She turned back to the class. That's what we teach here, not just how to kill precisely, but how to live with precision, how to make hard choices in impossible moments, how to survive the cost of those choices. A hand went up. Young woman, maybe 24, Marine Corps uniform. Ma'am, how many people have you killed? Petra had been waiting for this question. She answered honestly. 24 confirmed, each one documented, each one justified under the rules of engagement, each one necessary to save lives. She paused. And each one cost me something. Every single one. That's the payment, not guilt. Guilt is easy. The payment is carrying their weight forward and choosing to become someone who makes sure that weight means something. The class was silent. You'll hear stories about me, Petra continued, about Syria, about the impossible shots, about becoming the youngest operator to break kill records. Those stories make it sound like glory, like achievement. They're not. They're about 24 human beings who woke up one day and didn't go home, who had families, histories, reasons for the choices they made. Were they enemies? Yes. Did they need to die? In those moments, yes. But they were still human. And forgetting that, treating killing like it's just a technical problem to solve, that's how you become the monster. After class, as students filed out, someone knocked on her office door. Petra looked up to find Decker Quinn standing in the doorway, 18-month-old Petra Elizabeth Quinn on his hip. Sorry to interrupt, Quinn said. We were in the area, thought we'd stop by. Petra smiled, the first genuine smile in months, and came around her desk. She's gotten so big. Yeah, growing like a weed. Quinn set his daughter down. The toddler immediately grabbed onto Petra's leg, looking up with Quinn's eyes. Listen, I wanted to show you something. He pulled out a worn notebook, flipped it open. Page after page of dated entries, each one with the same header. Today's assumption check. March 3rd. Assume the new recruit couldn't handle the ruck march because she was small. Was wrong. She finished first. April 17th. Assume the local informant was lying because he wouldn't make eye contact. Learn that in his culture, direct eye contact with authority is disrespectful. Almost lost valuable intel because of my assumption. May 22nd. Assume my daughter's crying meant she was hungry. Wife pointed out I always assumed that. Turned out she just wanted to be held. Need to stop defaulting to the easy answer. Every day, Quinn said softly, every single day since Syria, I write down at least one assumption I made and whether it was right or wrong. You taught me that, Petra. You taught me that being wrong isn't the failure. The failure is not learning from being wrong. Petra felt her throat tighten. Decker, you saved my life in Somalia, he continued. But more than that, you changed how I think, how I lead, how I train. Every SEAL I work with now, I teach them what you taught me. Check your assumptions, choose your shots, and remember that the hardest choice is often the right one. He paused. My daughter's going to grow up knowing that strength isn't about never being wrong. It's about having the courage to admit it and change. That's your legacy. After Quinn left, Petra sat at her desk and stared at the rifle mounted on the wall. Not her M24, that was locked away forever. This was her father's rifle. The one he'd carried in Baghdad when he saved Amina. The one he'd carried in Yemen when he died doing the right thing. Her phone rang. Gus. Saw your interview, he said without preamble. Proud of you, little star. Thank you for teaching me how to come back. I didn't teach you that. I just reminded you of what you already knew. What your father knew. What your mother knew. Gus paused. How are you? Really? Petra considered the question. Considered the weight she carried, 24 lives, her father's death, the truth she'd exposed, the price she'd paid for all of it. I'm tired, she admitted, but I'm okay. I'm doing something that matters, teaching people that precision isn't just about the shooting, it's about the choosing. That's good. That's real good. Gus's voice was warm. Your father would be proud, not because you're the best shot, but because you're the best version of yourself. That's all he ever wanted. After the call, Petra walked out to the training range behind the institute. It was sunset, the sky painted in shades of orange and purple that reminded her of the mountains where Gus lived. At the far end of the range, 3,187 meters away, stood a target. The same distance as her impossible shot in Syria. The shot that had made her famous, that had proven she could do what no one else could. Petra set up her rifle. Not her father's, not her M24. A standard training rifle. Nothing special, just a tool. She settled into position. Checked the wind. Minimal, maybe 5 kilometers per hour from the west. Temperature perfect. Visibility clear. Every condition ideal. She chambered around. Looked through the scope. The target appeared in perfect focus. Red center circle sharp and clear. Her crosshairs settled dead center. She took a breath. Let it out slowly. Her finger found the trigger. And then she stood up. Petra ejected the round, cleared the rifle, and set it aside. She walked away from the range without looking back. Behind her, the target stood untouched. 3,187 meters away. The perfect shot. The impossible shot. The shot she didn't need to take anymore. In her pocket, her father's mirror caught the last light of the sun. On its surface, barely visible, the words he'd scratched so carefully. See yourself clearly, Mija. Always. Petra looked at her reflection. Not the ghost who'd walked through Syria. Not the hunter who'd chased Rahman through Somalia. Not the warrior who'd fought for her father's truth. Just herself. Petra Valdez, 27 years old, 24 confirmed kills, founder of an institute that taught precision in all things, in shooting, in choosing, in living. She whispered to the mirror, to her father, to the ghost of the girl she'd been before Syria changed her. I see myself clearly now, Papa. I'm not a soldier anymore. I'm not a killer. I'm not a ghost. She smiled, tears in her eyes. I'm a teacher. I'm someone who helps people come back from the places that almost destroyed me. I'm someone who knows that the hardest shot is the one you don't take, and I'm strong enough to walk away. The sun set behind the mountains. Petra walked back to the institute, where tomorrow she would teach 45 more students that precision wasn't about perfection. It was about choosing right over easy, truth over comfort, mercy over revenge. Her father had died for that truth. She would live for it. And maybe, just maybe, that was the better legacy. 5 years later, Petra Valdez published a book. Not a memoir, not a tactical manual, a meditation on choice, consequence, and the weight of necessary violence. She titled it, The Shots I Didn't Take, a sniper's journey from precision to peace. In the dedication, she wrote simply, "For Papa, who taught me to shoot. For Mama, who taught me to choose. For Gus, who taught me to heal. And for the 24, who taught me that every choice has a cost." The book became for its insistence that warriors must be more than technically proficient, they must be ethically sound. Petra never fired a rifle in anger again, never took another life, never returned to the world where the old rules didn't apply. Instead, she trained 312 operators over 6 years, taught them wind reading and ballistics and trigger control, yes, but more importantly, taught them how to carry weight without being crushed by it, how to make impossible choices in impossible moments, how to survive what they became when they crossed certain lines. Not one of her students ever killed without cause. All of them saved lives. And Petra, exhausted, changed, but no longer haunted, found something she'd thought was lost forever in Syria. Peace. Not the peace of forgetting, not the peace of denial, but the peace of someone who had walked through darkness and chosen, again and again and again, to move toward light. Augustus Thorne passed away peacefully at 74, sitting on his porch in the Blue Ridge Mountains with a book in his lap and sunset painting the sky. Petra scattered his ashes where he'd asked, among the pines where he'd taught her to heal. The last thing Gus said to her the day before he died was, "You healed me too, little star, more than you know." And Petra Valdez, who had killed 24 people and saved hundreds, who had exposed corruption and changed how the military thought about precision and ethics, who had walked away from the rifle when she could have become legendary, Petra went home to Richmond, to her institute, to her students, and taught them the hardest lesson of all, that sometimes the bravest thing a warrior can do is choose not to fight. That sometimes the hardest shot is the one you don't take. That sometimes surviving means learning to live with what you've done and becoming someone who ensures it meant something. She looked at her father's mirror one last time before locking it away with his rifle, his letters, his legacy of mercy and sacrifice. And she saw herself clearly, not a ghost, not a phantom, not a killer, just Petra, just human, just enough.